June 14, 2025, South China Sea. The sea was calm. Merchant traffic moved along its predictable lanes. Tankers from Qatar, container ships from Singapore, bulk carriers, loaded with iron ore, bound for Chinese factories. And in the middle of it all, an American warship quietly watched the horizon. The USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, was conducting a routine freedom of navigation patrol in international waters, 180 nautical miles from the nearest Chinese territory. Routine, until her radar detected something strange. 200 kilometers away, a Chinese Type 052D destroyer suddenly changed course, then accelerated. 18 knots, 24. 30. A direct intercept vector inside the Princeton's Combat Information Center. Radar operators watched the contact surge toward them. The numbers on the screen told a simple story. At that speed, the Chinese ship would reach weapons engagement range in less than 20 minutes. 17 minutes to be exact. No one said the words out loud, but every sailor in that dark room knew what they were looking at. Because in naval warfare, a warship racing towards you at flank speed usually means one thing: someone is preparing for a fight. The South China Sea is one of the most contested pieces of ocean on Earth. Every year, more than $3 trillion in global trade passes through its waters. Oil shipments, semiconductor cargo, consumer electronics. Entire economies depend on the sea lanes remaining open. But China claims nearly the entire region. Through its controversial 9-dash line, Beijing asserts control over waters that international law considers global commons. The United States rejects that claim, and so, several times a year, the US Navy conducts Freedom of Navigation operations, or FONOPs. The mission is simple: sail through contested waters, publicly, professionally, and demonstrate that international sea lanes remain open to everyone. On June 14, 2025, one such patrol was underway. At its center was the USS Nimitz carrier strike group, a floating fortress of American power projection. At the heart of the formation sailed the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz, displacing more than 104,000 tons and carrying 90 combat aircraft. Around her moved a defensive ring of cruisers and destroyers. Among them, the USS Princeton, a ship built for one purpose: controlling the battle space. Her AN/SPY-1 radar system could track hundreds of targets simultaneously. Her 122 vertical launch cells carried a mix of SM-2 and SM-6 missiles, capable of striking threats hundreds of kilometers away. And through the Navy's cooperative engagement capability, every sensor and weapon across the strike group shared the same tactical picture: one network, one brain, one trigger, which meant when the Chinese destroyer began accelerating, the entire strike group saw. At the exact same moment, mini payoff, 17 minutes. That was how long the Chinese ship needed to reach missile launch distance. But what Beijing didn't realize was that every American ship in the region had already calculated something else. If shooting started, the Chinese task force might not survive the first 5 minutes. 9:23. The radar contact. Inside the Princeton's Combat Information Center, the room glowed with radar displays and tactical maps. Operators worked quietly until one of them leaned forward. Contact accelerating, the radar track updated, speed increasing rapidly. The ship was identified moments later. Type 052D destroyer, one of the Chinese Navy's most modern surface combatants, armed with long-range YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, capable of striking targets over 290 nautical miles away. Threat level: moderate to high. The tactical action officer studied the intercept vector. There was no ambiguity. The Chinese ship wasn't just maneuvering, it was charging. 9:26. Within minutes, the radar data confirmed everything. The destroyer had shifted course directly toward the American formation, and she was accelerating hard. At 30 knots, she would close the distance rapidly. Weapons engagement range would occur in roughly 17 minutes. Inside the CIC, the recommendation was clear: recommend general quarters, battle stations, prepare for combat. But the captain gave a different answer. Let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves. The order was simple: continue monitoring, do not escalate yet. 9:30. Across the strike, sensors began sharing data automatically. The Princeton's radar picture flowed into every ship, every aircraft, every command team. Through the cooperative engagement capability, the Nimitz strike group operated like a single organ. If one radar saw something, every weapon would engage it. Destroyers USS Chung-Hoon and USS Kidd adjusted their position. Defensive screens tightened around the carrier. Fire control solutions began calculating automatically. Quiet, efficient, mathematical. 9:35. Aircraft detected high above the ocean at 25,000 feet. An E-2D Hawkeye scanned the skies. The aircraft's powerful radar detected something new. Multiple launches from the direction of the Chinese aircraft carrier, Shandong. Radar signatures confirmed. J-15 carrier fighter, heavy naval strike fighter, arrived on the Russian Su-33. They were climbing back and heading south toward the Americans. 9:37. On the deck of the USS Nimitz, the response began instantly. Yellow shirt deck crews directed aircraft into position. Steam catapults hissed to life. The first F/A-18E Super Hornet rolled forward, engines screaming. Catapult engaged. The fighter launched into the sky, then another and another. One aircraft every 45 seconds. Precision choreography perfected over decades of carrier operations. Within minutes, American fighters were climbing to intercept. 940, the technology gap. The incoming Chinese fighters faced a problem. Their carrier used a ski jump launch system. Without catapults, aircraft must launch with reduced fuel and weapons loads, which meant the J-15S were already operating near their endurance limits. American fighters launched at full combat weight. More fuel, more weapons, more flexibility, but the bigger advantage was invisible. Every Super Hornet was connected through Link 16 data networks. Each aircraft shared sensor data instantly. If one pilot saw a target, the entire formation saw it. Chinese pilots relied largely on voice commands. The difference wasn't small. Generation. 943. Electronic warfare. Then came the EA-18G Growlers. Electronic warfare aircraft equipped with powerful ALQ-99 jamming pods. They entered the battle space quietly and switched on their systems. Almost instantly, Chinese radar screens began filling with noise. Ghost targets appeared. Contacts multiplied. Radar locks broke and reformed unpredictably. American aircraft seemed to split, vanish, and reappear. Electronic warfare had turned the sky into chaos. 947, radar lock. Suddenly, the Chinese destroyer made its boldest move. Its Type 346A radar stopped searching and locked directly onto the USS Nimitz. Fire control illumination. In naval warfare, this is an unmistakable signal, the electronic equivalent of pointing a loaded gun. Inside Princeton's CIC, the atmosphere froze. If the radar lock continued, rules of engagement allowed self-defense. And that meant missiles. Lots of them. 948. But the American ships did something unexpected. Nothing. No missiles, no counterlock. Just calm observation. Because the Princeton's computers already had firing solutions calculated. SM-6 missiles. SM-2 interceptors. Multiple angles. Multiple ships. If the Chinese destroyer fired, it would likely be destroyed before its missiles even reached mid-course. The radar lock lasted 30 seconds. Then, it disappeared. 951. The submarine. Sonar operators suddenly detected something else. A submerged contact. Bearing 159. Range 15,000 yards. Acoustic signature analysis began instantly. Within seconds, the classification appeared. Type 039 diesel electric submarine. But the submarine had made a mistake. It had raised its snorkel to recharge batteries, which meant it was now detectable. And worse, it was loud. Very loud. To experienced sonar operators, it sounded like a freight train underwater. 1430, the show of force. Hours later, the Americans made their point. The USS Nimitz launched the largest coordinated air display of deployment. 48 aircraft filled the sky. Fighters, electronic warfare jets, airborne radar. The Growlers jammed Chinese radar networks. American fighters demonstrated combat maneuvering. Chinese pilots struggled to keep up. Fuel levels dropped dangerously. One by one, the J-15 fighters broke off, returning to their carrier. 1547, the final message. Then, something happened that shocked the Chinese task force. 6 nautical miles from the Shandong, the ocean suddenly exploded. A Virginia-class attack submarine surfaced. Water cascaded off its black hull. Lookouts stared and exploded. The submarine had been shadowing the Chinese fleet for 8 days, undetected. If this had been war, their carrier would already be gone. After 90 seconds on the surface, the submarine slipped beneath the waves again. Message delivered. For 17 minutes that morning, the world had hovered near a potential naval battle between two nuclear superpowers. Missiles were ready, aircraft were airborne, submarines were in position. One mistake could have triggered a chain reaction across the Pacific, but in the end, no missiles launched, no ships sank, no pilots died. Resolution. By late afternoon, the Chinese task force began withdrawing. Official statements later described the event as routine exercises, but everyone involved knew the truth. China had attempted to intimidate an American carrier. Instead, they discovered just how overwhelming that was. That was all it would have taken. 17 minutes between radar detection and missile launch range. 17 minutes between tension at the start of the largest naval war since 1945. Abrupt end. Because sometimes the only thing preventing war is the knowledge that you would lose it.